Okay, so today I wanted to do a video about the relationship between rape and sexism and homophobia. So basically I wanted to start with the phenomenon of blaming rape victims for their assault. I think recently there was a case in the United States, I forget where, of an 11-year-old girl that was gang raped, and of course there were questions about why she was dressing like she was older and hanging out with adults, and I mean, one could certainly make the argument that her parents should have been more vigilant to know where she was. However, most sexual assaults occur from a family member or a close family friend. So unfortunately, it's a myth that a lot of people hold, that you're more likely to be sexually assaulted by someone that you don't know, when the fact is it's more likely to be someone that you know and someone that you trust. So obviously I think the whole phenomenon of blaming the rape victim has to start with the belief that women are somehow inferior to men, that women to an extent owe men sex, and that they should understand that if they leave themselves in certain situations and make themselves vulnerable, the bad things are going to happen to them, and somehow that justifies the behavior, because she didn't do everything 100% correctly, then I can't be blamed for what happened. Unfortunately, I think that idea of blaming the rape victim carries over to situations where men are sexually assaulted by other men, and therefore, rather than being public about that and trying to put a stop to the abuse, the incentive of the victim is to pretend like it never happened, and maybe, internalize that rage against male homosexuals, thinking that that's what male homosexuality is all about, which is certainly a message that you get from people that are virulently anti-gay. And I do think that there is a fear among some men that if homosexuality became acceptable, then male and male rape would somehow become more acceptable, as acceptable as male and female rape is, which, I mean, you could argue that it's not acceptable, that, and that people are trying to do more to put a stop to sexual assaults, but the fact is that the conviction rate in the United States for rape has gone down. Not that, people are reporting more rapes, but that doesn't mean that they're ultimately seeing justice. And I do think that it sends there's always a burden on the victim to prove what happened, and there is a lot of denial out there. I can understand perfectly why people don't want to deal honestly with rape, because it is such an ugly thing to have to deal with. Me not being a rapist, I don't enjoy the knowledge of living in a world where such a significant percentage of the population thinks that that's okay, even if it's only 5 or 10% that would admit that they would, say, take advantage of a woman when she's passed out drunk, or some other similar kind of sexual assault that was, not consensual. But I really think that it's an indication that patriarchy is alive and well in society, and therefore sexism against women is okay, and it's okay to persecute men who don't fulfill their role as heterosexual conquerors. Scarily, when I was getting ready to make this video, I thought to myself, well, I should find that passage in Leviticus that people so often use to criticize homosexuals and to prove that God is against homosexuality. And sadly, I was able to find it in about 5 seconds, which is really sad because I'm not much of a Bible expert, but this particular verse, unfortunately, I'm familiar enough with, and I knew right where to find it. It's Leviticus chapter 18, verse 22. Thou shalt not lie with mankind as with womankind, it is abomination. Let's look at why this verse might be in the Bible, other than the commonly accepted notion that it's to condemn all male homosexuality for all time. Women back when this was written, just as in many parts of the world today, women were treated as property. First they were the property of their fathers, and then they became the property of their husbands. They were not considered full flesh and blood people. The concept of marital rape didn't exist. Basically, it was understood that if a woman was your wife, you had full access to her, and her sexual willingness or opinions on the matter didn't account for anything. So it's very understandable in a society like that, in a book written by men, that a passage like this would find its way, because we can't have men treating other men the way women are treated, because then society can't function if everyone in it is treated as second class and like property, and like they don't mean anything, like they're animals. So basically, I think that was what the passage is condemning specifically, not male homosexuality, period, but simply treating a man the way that you would have treated a woman back then, which was like the dirt under your feet. And I would expect, like I said, in a book written by men, that kind of verse would find its way into the Bible. But for all you idiots out there who think that this is some justification for you to, go with God and prevent gay marriage and condemn all male homosexuality, you're insane. And not only are you insane, but you are basically enabling, I feel, the victimization of males, sexual victimization of males, specifically young males, males that maybe are just finding their sexuality, males that are vulnerable. And I think that if you can keep around this idea that homosexuality is bad and that women are inferior, that you could continue to rape males and females at your leisure, and as long as you can play by the rules and you know how people are perceiving you and exactly how to manipulate people, then you can get away with what you want, because you have this whole idea that it's the rape victim's fault anyway. And rape victims, they know how they're perceived. There's already an incentive for them not to want to talk about what happened to them, because it was such a violation, and most people don't want to relive that kind of experience. They just want to try to move on from it and pretend like it didn't happen. I think by suppressing all male homosexuality, it just enables that kind of abuse to go on, because the victims of the sexual assault have less reason to come forward, because they know that, you know, that blame is going to be cast upon them, whether they were actually to blame or not. And in a society like that, where women are blamed for rape, I can understand why so many men are afraid of male homosexuality becoming mainstreamed, because they don't, you know, they know they're in a vulnerable position already, and I think maybe they're afraid that they'll become even more vulnerable if male homosexuality is accepted. But I think the most important thing that I wanted to stress when I did this video is that rape is not a heterosexual or a homosexual phenomenon. It's a human phenomenon. And there are people who do it and who are complicit in it. You know, they're just fellow human beings. You can't tell by looking at them that they'd be willing to victimize someone that way. Unfortunately, they have a very strong incentive to hide what they're doing. And when we have all this sexual repression and blaming the rape victim, it just makes it that much easier for sexual predators to do what they do. And it's got to stop. It's really self-destructive and insane, and we're really doing a disservice to our children when we keep them ignorant about sexuality, when we tell them lies about sexuality, like that it's somehow inherently wrong to be gay and it's a choice, and all the other bullshit that people say. That's just that bullshit. It's not true. It just really makes me angry, and it also makes me sad, because people that I see getting so angry and so outraged about homosexuality, I really have to wonder a lot of times where that rage is coming from. Is it from their own repressed feelings? Maybe they sexually victimized by someone, and they think that by speaking out against homosexuality that it's somehow gonna prevent someone from violating someone else the way they were violated. I don't know, but I really, really resent people equating male-on-male rape with homosexuality, because true sexuality, in my opinion, has to be something that's mutually shared and enjoyed. Otherwise, it's just masturbation using someone else's body. And I just wish that people, you know, I think that if we had less sexism and less homophobia, that we would have less rape, because rape victims wouldn't be taught to feel ashamed, and then maybe we could actually put a stop to some sexual assaults and prevent them from occurring, rather than enabling predators to go on to the next victim, because nobody wants to talk about it because of the atmosphere of shame and repression surrounding the whole issue. And anyway, it's not a Islam versus the West issue. I think people in the West tend to get kind of self-righteous when they look at, oh, and, you know, Saudi Arabia, they'll throw a woman in jail for being raped, you know, and unless she has, you know, so many male witnesses to her assault, then, you know, she's never going to get justice. She's never going to be believed that she was raped. I'm not saying that there aren't people that would be willing to lie about being raped, but then again, if we didn't live in a society that was so sexually repressed, if people could just admit what their sexual desires are, you know, then maybe you wouldn't have the incentive for anyone to lie about being raped. They'd be able to admit, well, maybe it wasn't a good decision, you know, but I did have sex willingly, you know, and that would be the end of it. Like I said, I just think that the whole atmosphere of repression and shame surrounding sexuality leads to a lot of rapes, and I just wish that society would change so that that wouldn't happen. So less sexism, less homophobia equals less rape, in my opinion, because then we can really start targeting who the predators are and stop blaming the victims. Thank you.